morning, audience, or good afternoon. Members, good afternoon, audience. It's Wednesday, February 19th. A quorum is near, and the Minnesota Senate Education Policy Committee will now come to order. First off, before we hear testifiers and bills today, I want to let everybody in the audience know it's National School Bus Driver Appreciation Day. So if you rode a school bus here, make sure on the way home you let your bus driver know. So a huge thank you to those incredible school bus drivers who safely transport our children to and from school every day. Your dedication, patience, and kindness make a difference in the lives of so many students and families. Through early mornings, all kinds of weather, especially in the last couple days, and busy schedules, the bus drivers show up with a smile on their face, ensuring those young children get to their school on time safely. And we appreciate, as education policy members, the hard work. And last year, we had the School Bus Driver of the Year come testify on why I do believe they were from Hopkins or St. Louis Park, and they testified about their role they play in a child's life, and that they were the first person from the school district that laid eyes on the child and the last person in the school district to lay eyes on the child. And that bus driver told us in committee that they have within their hands the power to make that child's day or break that child's day. And it was an honor to hear that particular bus driver talk about the privilege of making those children's days by greeting them by their name and a smile on their face. So if you do know any bus drivers, thank them for their service that they provide for hundreds of thousands of children every day. So today we have a full agenda. We'll be hearing Senator Farnsworth's bill and Senator Boldon's bill and Senator Gustafson's bill and Senator Mann's bill. But first off today is Senator Farnsworth's bill, and we'll be beginning with Senate File 360. Senator Farnsworth, I'm just guessing this, please proceed, that this is going to be among the highlights of your life, because as long as I've known you, this has been a passion of yours. So have at it, Senator, and after your testimony, we have a series of testifiers. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, for allowing me to present Senate File 360. And as you say, this was the reason that I ran for the Minnesota Senate, was to take care of this. When I was first elected to the Minnesota Senate, the school counselors in the building that I work at asked me to try and eliminate the Algebra 2 graduation requirement. They noted that not every student needs to take this class, and it prevents them from taking a math class that they will actually prepare them for the future. I was already convinced by two former colleagues who we actually have testifying on Zoom today that this was something that we needed to do. So what exactly does the bill do? First, it provides students in schools with more flexibility by removing the Algebra 2 graduation requirement in favor of a locally designed class to meet students' needs. Not every student needs to take Algebra 2. For students that are going into engineering, Algebra 2 is a necessity. For students going into a trade, at best, it's just another class that they have to take. At worst, it's a barrier to their success. We need to allow schools to offer the math classes that their students will actually use in life and in their careers. Second, the bill allows schools to count the new personal finance class as a math credit as long as the class is taught by a licensed math teacher. And this addition to the bill was in response to a lot of school administrators that are having a hard time figuring out where to put that personal finance class in their school schedule. It was especially hurting smaller schools. The algebra requirement is fairly recent, first being implemented in 2006 for 8th graders, and then in 2014, the Algebra 2 requirement. And the results have proven to be less than successful. In your packet, you should have an article from the Minnesota Reformer, and this points out that students are actually doing worse in math than they were before these algebra requirements. What was intended to set high standards has had the opposite effect. Quite frankly, we tried making every kid take algebra, and it didn't work, and I think we need to move to a new path. So now I'd like to hear from the testifiers who will do a better job of explaining this than I have.
Thank you, Senator Farnsworth. And the testifiers can Superintendent Fred Broughton, is that remote or? I think that's him. Right. So Superintendent, if you identify yourself for the record and sign in at your convenience, there should be a sign-up sheet up there. And begin when you're ready. And identify yourself if I already said that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity. Senator Farnsworth, also thank you. Thank you to Superintendent Pat Walsh for making me take his place to do this, because he is actually in Arizona. He's probably playing golf right now, so my neighbor to the south asked me to step in for him. But my name is Scott Fed Broughton. I am the superintendent of Browerville, Minnesota, and I am here in support of Senator Farnsworth's bill, Senate File 360. There is no doubt that Algebra 2 is of value to pursuing in some fields of study. But when we mandated that one-size-fits-all package curriculum, we did an injustice to our students. Currently, we develop personalized learning plans for our students, ensuring that we are career and college ready. However, we do that when we require us to teach math courses that I, and you, and 80 to 90% will never use when they leave that classroom. Administrators understand conceptual thinking, processing, and related skills. We also understand the frustration that our students undertake by taking classes that they do not need or that they even hate on a daily basis. Students begin taking algebra in the 8th grade, as just talked about by Senator Farnsworth. We lose roughly 50% of them right then and there, yet we continue to force them down the line. They either can't do it or they despise it. I was around and understand the thought process when the liberal arts curriculum, when the bills were passed way back when. We raised the flag then too. Times have changed. Students, once they leave our doors, no longer flock to 2- and 4-year institutions. They have degrees in hand. Some go straight for the workforce. We are even being asked to educate an entirely different generation, a generation raised on devices. They want their time, and they are expected to replace our greatest generation, the baby boomers. There are a number of testimonies today that you will hear. All will give you detailed reasons for the change. I've come just to give you common sense. Before I leave, I want to challenge you to do a couple things. I want you to simply ask your own children or your grandchildren a couple simple equations. What is 9 times 7? What is 8 times 6? Can they answer that in the snap of a second? Because they should be able to do that, because all of you can, and I can. But our elementary kids and our high school kids can't do that anymore, okay? My kids in Browerville can divide and cut a 7.5 foot 2x4 in half, because we offer those classes. Can you guys do that? Can your kids do that? It's not as easy as you think, okay? Look for personalized learning. We offer the availability to look for the senator's new bill, to offer the, I have the notes in here somewhere, that for the personal finance. We need to look at the lifelong learning in the budgeting, to look at debt, to look at credit management, and to certainly to be more beneficial to students as we prepare them for their lives ahead. So that's what I ask you, okay? Give us the opportunity to expand our curriculums and to ask for that personalized learning for our kids. We do not need for every student to have Algebra 2. We are just hindering them. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me before I leave?
I think we're going to go through all the testifiers and then open it up, but if any of the members of the committee have a question specifically for the testifier at the table, I think we could honor that, but otherwise we'll just hold back questions till the end. Thank you for your testimony. The next 2 testifiers are remote. Tony Harkinen and Chad Snyder. Tony, or Mr. Harkinen, whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mr. Farnsworth, nice to see you again. Thank you for having me here today. And I am here today to support Senate File 360 to eliminate graduation requirement of Algebra 2 for high school students. As I said, my name is Tony Harkinen. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and a Bachelor of Applied Science degree in mathematics from the University of Minnesota Duluth, along with my teaching certificate in mathematics and a master's equivalent designation in education. I worked for 5 years after college at the now closed Erie Mining Company in Aurora as a mining engineer before returning to college at UMD. I taught math for 32 years, 5 years in the St. Louis County District, 2 years at Mesabi Community College, and finished with 25 years at Hibbing High School. I taught almost every available course from junior high through high school except for calculus during my teaching career. My experience is vast across the entire junior high to high school curriculum, including 19 years teaching Algebra 2. I've been retired, thankfully, for almost 8 years. The current Algebra 2 curriculum is very, very rigorous. Taught correctly, it is well beyond the comprehension of well over half the student population, in my opinion. I feel that it is unnecessary for most students unless they are going to attend a four-year college or university and go into any major requiring calculus or other major needing a highly technical knowledge of math concepts. Certainly majors such as engineering, actuarial science, business degrees, etc., require this knowledge, so Algebra 2 is of course appropriate for those students. Students with many other majors would not benefit from Algebra 2. They would be much better served with courses in personnel management, statistics, and rudimentary data analysis. As it stands now, most districts have struggled to meet the Algebra 2 requirement. My old district, Hibbing Public Schools, had to create a much watered-down curriculum called Basic Algebra 2 to meet the Algebra 2 requirement for graduation. Having taught this course many times and also the regular Algebra 2 curriculum, I know that Basic Algebra 2 is nowhere near meeting the standards for the regular Algebra 2 curriculum, simply because the students could not grasp the rigorous course requirements. In my 2-year college experience, I saw firsthand how many entering students needed remedial math courses. I can't imagine how they would have been able to comprehend or pass the standard requirements of Algebra 2 in high school. Many of my students needed to go back to first-year algebra to begin their college careers. They also required remediation in geometry, trigonometry, and then perhaps a higher algebra before even going on to what is now called college algebra. Math scores in Minnesota are generally better than the national average. However, the latest data from the Department of Education shows that only 34.7% of 11th graders were proficient in math overall. And yet our graduation, only 1 year later, is 83.3%. I'm not sure how that works. In the isolated algebra strand, only 27% of students were above expectations. 16% were at or near expectations, and a whopping 57% were below expectations. And remember that this test is given to 11th graders. This is in line with what I saw in my teaching career, yet we continue along the same path of requiring a very rigorous Algebra 2 curriculum and somehow expect different results. I believe a change is necessary. I think it is important to note that math ability is a talent, in my opinion. Many people will tell you that they were, quote, bad at math. I get that a lot from a lot of parents. Maybe some of you have that mindset. Some people are artistic. I'm not one of them. I could not pass a rigorous art class regardless of the teacher or time. We all have innate talents that should be explored and developed. We should not foist upon our students things that they are incapable of. However, we all know that some math is necessary in our everyday lives, regardless of occupation and place. We need to develop math curriculums that are not, quote, one size fits all, and give our students what they need to navigate their chosen jobs and to succeed in everyday life. Algebra 2 is not what most students need to accomplish that. My experience has shown me that most people can get along very well without more math schooling beyond first-year algebra, geometry with a bit of trigonometry, and a good consumer math curriculum that includes personal finance, a rudimentary knowledge of things such as compound interest, amortization, insurance, and statistical analysis. In summary, my experience as an educator leads me to believe that Algebra 2 should not be a high school graduation requirement, but it is still a valuable and necessary course for many, but not all students. Let's give our students what they truly need to succeed in math curriculums that better fit their possible futures. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate your attention.
Thank you for your testimony.
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't think so, but
Thank you
hang
again so
on
much.
if you can.
I sure will. Thank you.
Assistant Principal Chad Snyder, we're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Chad Snyder. I'm the assistant principal at Hibbing High School. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of Senator Farnsworth's bill. As an assistant principal, I see firsthand how our one-size-fits-all approach to math requirements does not serve all students equitably. While Algebra 2 is a valuable class, requiring it for graduation can create unnecessary barriers for students whose career paths demand different mathematical skills. I urge you to support a policy that allows local control over that third year of math, giving schools the flexibility to offer courses that align with students' interests and career goals. For example, in an advanced industrial arts course, students might be required to measure materials down to the millimeter, calculate angles for precise cuts, or determine load capacities, all real-world applications of mathematics that are critical for the success in trades and technical careers. These students are mastering complex mathematical concepts, but in a context that is meaningful to them. Or perhaps in a personal finance class taught by a math teacher, where students could learn how to create and manage a budget, calculate interest on savings and loans, compare credit card rates, and understand the impact of taxes and inflation, or learn how tariffs actually work. By applying mathematical concepts to real-life financial situations, students develop critical thinking skills and financial literacy that will help make them informed decision makers in adulthood. By allowing schools to determine the most relevant third-year math options, we can ensure that all students are prepared for their futures, whether they choose college, technical training, or directly entering into the workforce. I encourage you to remove the Algebra 2 requirements and instead empower local districts to design math pathways that truly serve our students. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. And we missed a remote testifier, Terry Vessel.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I just want to start out by thanking the committee chairman and the committee members for letting me speak today. As you pointed out, I'm a retired industrial art teacher. I spent 35 years teaching in Minnesota and a couple years in Wisconsin. During that time, I taught 9th through 12th grade students, and it was in drafting, woodworking, carpentry, building construction, machine shop, and welding. And about, I don't know, it must have been about the time where they started coming out with the new grad standards, about 2014. I actually had a conversation with Tony Harkinen, because he taught in the building, and Senator Farnsworth. We were just talking about how my students were struggling in machine shop, in carpentry, just simple skills of reading a ruler and adding and subtracting fractions. And Tony and I sat down, and we kind of came up with a little plan that it'd be neat if we could co-teach a class, call it tech math or tech algebra, whatever you want to call it, and things like that. And we met with some of the counselors at Hibbing at the time, and everyone thought it was a great idea. And we took it to the administration, and we were told that it wasn't going to work. And I myself, I have my administrative degree, so I know what was going on at the state level at that time and kind of paying attention. And the problem was there wasn't any money. The problem was there wasn't any teachers. We had everything, but it didn't meet the standards. And I've seen firsthand with my students that have gone on to technical careers that they have struggled a little bit, but I've also seen on the job site, we have a program at Hibbing that kids actually go out and at the local L&M radiator and weld during the class time. We have a building construction house that we partnered with Habitat for Humanity that we built from the ground up. So I've seen over the years how kids struggle with some of the basic skills, and they do catch on and they move on. And the majority of my students come back being very successful at what they do, but we're kind of handicapping them a little bit, giving them that slower start or whatever. We could be doing so much more. So I'm not here to talk about, you know, what we're missing or what we can't do. I want to talk about what we can do. And this is important. I think we really put a lot of money and time and effort on the lower end students, the special education students. We put a lot of time and money into the upper level students that are going on to be scientists and engineers, and we kind of forget the middle students. And those are the kids that are going on to the 1 and 2 year tech programs. And I think it's time that we give them a little bit better opportunity to succeed at the high school level. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Commissioner. Commissioner Weddell, under the Department of Education a few years back. Welcome.
Thank you.
Identify yourself and sign
Thank
in
you.
when you're done.
Mr. Chair and members, thanks for this opportunity to testify before you about a bill that I've been supportive of for many, many years, even though it's being just introduced. For the record, I served as the Minnesota Commissioner of Education, then was called Children, Families, and Learning, in the administration of Governor Carlson from 1996 through 99, but I also served as Deputy Commissioner in the Perpich administration from 87, I believe it was, through 1990. Quickly, I want to thank Senator Siwadzinski. I'm going to be with him on Saturday as we work on civics, and we're going to be working with the Minnesota Social Studies Council and trying to improve how civics is taught. So thank you, Senator, for your work in that. My testimony basically says two things. One is the current mandatory minimum mathematics standard of Algebra 2, and it's actually beyond Algebra 2. There's calculus in that, pre-calc and some statistics in our current, it's really advanced Algebra 2. And that standard was really written for a different era. It was written when the objective was that for all students to go to a 4-year liberal arts college. For some reason, we had done away with vocational technical education, and the goal was everybody will go to liberal arts college. And we wanted to mesh the high school graduation standards with the entrance of colleges. So I suppose it made sense in that regard, even though it didn't really make sense at all. But that's why that advanced mathematics standard was really created. Well, that no longer is the situation, as we all know. So it's well past the time to remove that standard. And my second point is that only students who are ready to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade should do so. We have to keep in mind that there's a whole year of difference, age difference in 8th grade. Those students that were born in late August are very young, and those that are born in early September are the oldest in the 8th grade. So that 1 year is a huge difference in their development. So we ought to make sure that our 8th grade, that our schools offer beginning algebra in 8th grade, but not require that all students take it. Actually, some students can take algebra in the 7th grade and be proficient at it. I'm not going to go through all of my testimony. You have my written testimony, and previous testifiers have done just an excellent job of identifying what I'm prepared to say. But more of our schools are moving towards personalization, and that's what we really want to do. And moving away from the one-size-fits-all school, which Algebra 2 for everybody is part of one-size-fits-all. We're personalizing standards. And of course, Algebra 2 is very rigorous. We do want every student to go through a rigorous course of study, but not rigorous in the same areas. Yeah, some would be rigorous in literature, in writing, in biology, whatever. And others, of course, rigorous in mathematics. But even this math standard serves no one. It serves no one. It's too low for the aspiring engineer or mathematician, and it's too high for everyone else. So you know, in the era of personalization, it just doesn't fit at all. Let's see, my second point in my testimony is that I do support that all students must be proficient in a baseline of studies in academics and literature and in the arts, and that all students must be rigorous in a rigorous course of study, but again, not rigorous in the same area. As I've already said, this standard was passed when everybody had to, when everybody was expected to go to a four-year liberal arts college, and that simply isn't the situation now at all. One of our testifiers said that on the 11th grade math test, the state MCAs, that I think he said 30-some%. That's probably the current data. The data that I was using, it says that about 55% of the high school students pass the current state high school math test. It may be lower than that, but again, I raise the question, well, then why isn't our high school graduation rate 55%? If we're really insisting on that standard. And the reason is because high school math teachers know if they don't give that student a D-, they won't graduate. And what purpose does that serve? So we're forcing math teachers to give a lot of D-, even though, number one, that is not proficient, but it enables students to graduate. Back about 12 or 13 years ago, you did pass a bill called rigorous course study waiver, which enabled parents to go before a school board. Now picture this, a parent to go before a school board and petition the board to let their child take a different kind of class instead of any of the current standards. Well, no parent is going to do that, and very few, if any, parents ever did. But in support of that bill, I, along with a West Metro superintendent of a very prestigious school district, the superintendent said, unless you pass this bill, 30% of the kids in my high school senior class will not graduate, and they have already been accepted into some of the most prestigious universities around the country. He said, you can take the calls from the parents who would call me. So that was passed. All high schools did was let principals and teachers use that rigorous course waiver. But requiring kids to take Algebra 2 really removes from them the opportunity to take classes that are interest to them, that are motivating to them, that are in their kind of career track, not that they have a career track yet, but really motivates them to do so. The opposite causes huge problems. They know they're going to fail. They think they are stupid. It causes huge mental health problems. Imagine you are a high school senior, you're not good in math, you know you're not going to pass this class, you know you're not going to graduate, you know all of that pressure is on you. The mental health issues that this law, this standard causes is very, very significant. I just want to end with a quick story about my own granddaughter, who was one of those who wasn't good in math. In the 4th grade, she knew she was going to wanted to be a performer, a musical performer. She knew it. She learned how to play piano, violin, guitar. She wrote her own music. She even sang on the big stage at the state fair and downtown Minneapolis locations. But in high school, in her senior year, she knew she was not going to pass algebra. So finally, her math teacher said, Brennan, I will give you a D- so you can pass, so you can graduate. She was then accepted into the prestigious Berklee College of Music in Boston, the Harvard of music schools. 4 years later, she graduated among the top of her class of 2,000 graduates. She went on to New York and to Nashville, performing. Last week or 2 weeks ago, she was in LA attending the Grammys. She went to Grammys party where a very select group go to those parties. I believe she will be receiving a Grammy one of these years. And then in March, she's going to be going to the South by Southwest Music Festival outside of Austin, a very well-known festival. And then she's going to be performing with Willie Nelson. None of this would have happened if she would not have been given that D- so that she could have graduated. But let's assume, Mr. Chair and members, you believe, by God, we're going to stick with this rigorous standards. We're going to tell Commissioner Jett, you enforce this standard. One of two things is going to happen. One is students are not going to graduate. They're going to have to continue at more than likely area learning centers for 1, 2, 3 years at a huge cost. And when they finally pass, it will mean very, very little. Or number two, they'll simply drop out. I suggest that's what students will do. So that is what's riding on this bill. So, Mr. Chair and members, I really urge you to remove both the requirement for graduation and the 8th grade requirement to take Algebra 1. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be delighted to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll see you Saturday. Next up, and you, Commissioner, you can wait for a few more minutes if you have questions. Yes, I'm assuming. Okay. Dr. Henkin, you're remote.
Yep. Hello. Thank you so much, Chair and committee
And yes, we
members.
can hear you. You forgot to say, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. I'm glad you can hear me. Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Kristen Hingen, and I'm a college and career readiness policy lead at EdTrust in Washington, D.C. We're a national nonprofit that works to close opportunity gaps for students in education. And I'm here to offer another perspective on removing the Algebra 2 requirement today. And I want to start by saying that every student can be a math student. And what we believe about our students matters, and current research and best practices show that teachers and high expectations can do a lot to help all students develop a positive math identity and succeed in rigorous math relevant to a variety of paths, life paths, career paths. But I'm here today to share that national and state level research show that students who complete higher levels of math in school enroll and complete post-secondary education more than their peers. So students who take pre-calculus or dual credit math classes, including things like statistics, are 6 times more likely to complete a post-secondary credential than their peers that only take up to Algebra 2. And I commend Minnesota for looking to modernize the traditional high school math sequence. We must prepare students to have data skills and statistical fluency required for life and work in the 21st century. That should include multiple math pathways beyond the traditional path towards calculus, which Algebra 2 is working towards calculus. We know most careers won't require calculus. However, it's important to note that calculus does weigh heavily in college admissions decisions, and it's a sign of academic rigor that college admissions officers value. Speaking of, the University of Minnesota Twin Cities requires 4 years of math for admissions, and that includes a requirement for Algebra 2. So knowing this, Minnesota should ensure its graduation requirements are aligned with college admissions requirements at the state's 2- and 4-year colleges and universities to ensure no student is unintentionally unprepared for their future, or surprised they're not eligible to apply to a college of their choice upon graduation. Instead, Minnesota should establish multiple rigorous math pathways that expand and never limit students' academic and career opportunities. It's true, Algebra 2 should embrace, for example, data science to be more relevant and engaging to today's students, and Algebra 2 is very relevant to data science and statistics. But eliminating Algebra 2 as a high school graduation requirement will mean fewer students will take the class, and research shows us this will limit students' future opportunities. More Minnesota grads will not be ready for college. They will not be ready for math skills needed for their careers of the future. There will be fewer students ready for STEM careers, which are expected to grow at twice the rate of other jobs in the next decade, meaning Minnesota is unlikely to have a diverse and representative STEM workforce. I want to share that in 2018, Kentucky removed their requirement for students to take Algebra 2 to graduate. And Kentucky has also done a lot of great work to bring investments to their state in the last few years, including several new billion-dollar battery manufacturing plants that brought thousands and thousands of jobs. The state now has a heightened demand for workers with STEM skills, yet local chambers of commerce in the state are finding many Kentuckians graduating from high school are not ready for these well-paying jobs. These are not jobs that require a college degree, but they do require training after high school, or even training with an employer. And these chambers of commerce are finding these students do not have the STEM skills ready to be able to access these needed credentials and employer training. And so these jobs are seeking workers from outside the state. So in short, we have a really strong body of research that shows it's advantageous to take Algebra 2 and math courses beyond it to maximize students' choices and prepare for high-demand, high-wage jobs. There is a world here where it's not a false choice between Algebra 2 and no Algebra 2, but high expectations for all students and a more relevant, engaging Algebra 2 that embraces data science and it prepares students for their futures. It's really important that all Minnesotans receive the rigorous education and opportunities they need for an economically prosperous future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. And lastly, I believe Mr. Shaver.
Chair Swedzinski, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Matt Shaver. I'm a teacher and the Senior Policy Director at Ed Allies. We're education advocates who work on policy to ensure that all students have access to a rigorous and engaging education in Minnesota. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate File 360. We have concerns about lowering standards and lowering expectations for what Minnesota students should be able to know and do in math, and do not support the direction Senate File 360 would take our state. Without a solid foundation in math, students can fall short when it comes to accessing career options in competitive STEM fields, from engineering to biotech to computer science. While not all students will pursue those fields, they should be set up to have the opportunity to do so. Many colleges and universities, like the University of Minnesota and Minnesota State systems, require intermediate algebra for admissions. This is the standard they expect of all students entering a four-year program. If we pull back on what is expected of students in high school, we'll create even bigger gaps when it comes to who is ready to succeed in college. We need to think really carefully about how these policy proposals would impact our entire P20 pipeline. For years, we've known that students who need remedial courses at the college level are at a huge disadvantage. These courses cost students money and time and result in 0 credit toward degrees. Lowering the bar on high school math will push more students into these remedial pathways. Minnesota has worked to be a leader in math, not only ensuring students leave high school with a strong foundation in algebra, but by attempting to get kids on a strong trajectory starting in middle school. Looking at the data, we're getting something right. The most recent NAEP scores placed us 4th in the nation for 8th grade math, right behind Wisconsin and Massachusetts, and the highest performing school system in the country, the Department of Defense. We've heard several versions today of the argument, when's the last time you used algebra? And it's a clever argument, but one that could be applied to so many things we require about Minnesota students to learn about in school. It's probably been like 1 million years since you've had to identify the use of figurative language in a persuasive text, right? When was the last time you thought about the Teapot Dome scandal? Or the last time you've been asked to identify the correct position of the sun, earth, and moon when there's a waxing gibbous? Recognizing a fellow Civil War buff and Senator Farnsworth, outside the two of us, how many people in the room know that the only deaths at the Battle of Fort Sumter happened accidentally after the siege ended during a 100-gun salute in honor of the bravery of the soldiers defending Sumter? As a teacher, I was asked countless times by students, why do we need to learn this? And I will be very honest. For some things, there's a pretty straightforward answer. Elapsed time, for example. How many minutes do I have to eat my lunch before Senate policy starts? Something I need to figure out twice a week. The difference between camouflage and mimicry is something that's not as useful to me on a daily basis in my current line of work. But the better and honest answer to that question that kids have been asking since Plato first asked Socrates, the answer is because challenging ourselves to learn new things is good for our brains. Keeping standards and expectations high for all Minnesota students is good for kids and for their future. Ed supports leaving those math requirements in place. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share our feedback, and thank you all for your service to our state.
Thank you. Members, any questions for any of the testifiers or the author of the bill? Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a few, if that's okay, and they're primarily for the bill author. So, Senator Farnsworth, are you saying that kids shouldn't learn math in school? Is that your contention with your bill, or really what are you saying here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Duckworth. No, I am not saying that kids should not use math. So the bill still requires 3 years of math. So kids will still have opportunities to take all of the math classes they need. It'll just be tailored to what they would actually use. If you heard the testimony from Mr. Vessel about the class that he and Mr. Harkinen tried to develop, they wanted to develop math for the trades, and the principal said, sounds like a great class, but we can't do it, doesn't meet the standards. And those kids that are going to go into the trades were not served well by having to take algebra too. So long answer to a short question, no, I'm not trying to get rid of math, I'm trying to make it more flexible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I can. So, and this kind of ties into your response a little bit. You know, we've heard a lot, and I'm intrigued by the bill. I'm trying to be open-minded about it because to what some folks have said, we obviously don't want to try to lower standards for kids, but at the same time, we also need to be, I think, realistic about what we're asking of kids. A lot of the folks that would oppose your bill say what's going to really hamper us from preparing kids for college, specifically a four-year college. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a teacher, are you not? Yeah. In your opinion, and as a teacher, what's the point of high school? Is it to get every kid to a four-year college, or what other considerations are there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Duckworth. In my opinion, the point of high school is to prepare kids for life, whatever that life looks like. At some point through the grad standards, the goal of high school became prepare every single kid to go to a four-year college and university. But my opinion is that school should be to prepare kids for their life and to make them better citizens. And actually, I'm going to use this as an opening to respond to one of Mr. Shaver's comments. You know, he said, well, what am I doing this for? What's the point? There are some things that we learn, like civics, because it makes us a better citizen. There are some things that we learn, like math, that makes us a better employee or a better student if we're going to go to college. And so that was sort of an apples to oranges kind of an argument by saying, well, what do I have to learn this for? Because, you know, as I said, there are some things that we just learn because it makes us better human beings and better citizens.
Mr. Chair, if I may. So I read some of the information that you provided in preparation for this bill, and when I look at this, the question I have for you is specific to the standard that is required as it relates to Algebra 2. Is Minnesota an outlier as it relates to this standard in our schools, or what do you know about other states and maybe their experiments with this in the past?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are currently only 12 states that require Algebra 2, and I forgot to print that one up and bring it with me, but we are definitely not with the majority of states as far as states that require Algebra 2. But yeah, that's about all the information I have for that.
One more, Mr. Chair, if I may. Well, what's interesting is it looked like in some of the literature you provided that there was at least one state that tried this and actually changed and reverted back to not making it a part of the required graduation requirements because the students were maybe not, it wasn't having the impact that they thought it would. If your bill were to become law, could school districts still provide Algebra 2 or math honors programs as options for students if they and their community would like to see those options provided to their students?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Yes, schools would continue. I mean, I don't think there's any school that would stop providing Algebra 2. But they would have more options. So kids that aren't going to become an engineer or a mathematician, if they're going to become a welder, could take a math for the trades class. So I would be very disappointed if schools said, oh, hey, we don't have to offer Algebra 2 anymore. And I don't think that's what would happen. Certainly that's not the intent of the bill. The intent is for students to get the math course that they actually would use in the future.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate that. And I should reveal that I have a pretty big bias. Just you're talking to a guy that math is my weakness. I was a kid in high school that as soon as the day ended, I'd go right back to my math teacher's classroom, as would probably several other kids, to try to get even more math instruction. I was also a July birthday, so I was one of the young kids in class that always maybe felt like I was a little bit behind and struggling trying to catch up in math. And so I think acknowledging that reality and the impact it could have on kids sometimes when you are requiring them to take courses that may or may not ultimately be necessary for their ultimate success in graduating high school and whatever it is they plan to do after that is something that we should take into consideration. And also, you provided quite a bit of feedback from people in classrooms and school buildings that seem to think your bill or what you're proposing is valid. And that's not something I can just shrug off. So I think there's more conversation and discussion to be had here. And also, reading your literature, when this became law, it looked like there were a fair amount of respected or reputable organizations that were advising the state not to do it, which I think is interesting. So I'm open-minded to this. And for any kids out there that struggle with math, just know that you too can become an average state senator.
Members, anybody else among the average members of this committee? Thank you, Senator. Thank you, testifiers. I do have a couple comments about, well, one, Mr. Verbaten, thank you for considering the baby boomers the greatest generation. I don't think we deserve that title. That was the generation before us, but I appreciated that shout out to us. And Mr. Shaver, wherever you are, I cite the Teapot Dome scandal on a daily basis, so I don't know where you are now. If you see, yeah, there you are. I have to piggyback a little bit off of Senator Duckworth's comments, and as well, I mean, I'm sure everybody's got a story about their math experience in high school, but for me in high school, growing in the 70s in Wisconsin, there, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I was ready to, commencement was coming up, and the counseling department noticed there was about 30 guys that weren't going to graduate, and they didn't, because they didn't have a math class on their curriculum or their, anyways, they created this class called human math. as opposed to inhuman math. And that was the only math class I had in high school, was a class called human math. I have no idea what we studied. I have no memory of, but I remember doing well in the class because it was a class about humans. And, but nonetheless, I became an average state senator without an Algebra 2 class to graduate. Senator Farnsworth, I do support this bill because I think last session, or 2 years ago, we passed personal finance, financial literacy to graduate, and I just think this might be a carrot to school districts as they juggle some of the newer requirements, and is there something they can take off their plate? And Algebra 2 that you're so passionate about does seem to be maybe that carrot we can supply the school districts with. But anyways, with that said, final comments, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to the committee. I do want to respond to a couple of the comments that were made by the last two testifiers. Dr. Hentgen said, every student can be a math student, and I agree with that. Every student can and should be a math student. Math is not interchangeable with Algebra 2, though. Different students require different math, and so I agree with that statement. And she also said no student should be unprepared for their future. And I agree with that, which is why I want to make this change, because right now we're preparing all of our students, or we're trying to prepare all of our students to go to a four-year college and university. And I looked up the numbers today. About 61% of our high school graduates will attend a 2 or 4 year college after high school. The rest of them are just going to work. 64% of those that go will get a degree within 6 years. And so we're trying to prepare that 61% that's going to college, and we're leaving the other students that are not going to college behind. And then the comments about lowering the bar, I just want to say, I find it kind of insulting that we would say that a kid that needs or wants to take a math for the trades class is somehow inferior to somebody who's going to take an Algebra 2 class and go to college. I have a problem with that, because they're the ones that are building our homes. They're fixing our electric, they're fixing our cars, they're doing the work that builds this country. It's not lowering the bar. We want all students to have high standards, but they shouldn't all have the same high standard. They shouldn't all have the same end goal, which is to go to a four-year college and university. And the last thing that I want to leave you with, according to researcher Anthony Corvale with Georgetown University, 11% of the jobs in the United States require some level of algebra. 11%. 89% of the jobs in this country require no algebra, but we're telling 100% of the students in Minnesota, you need to take algebra just in case you happen to take one of those 11% of the jobs. And I trust our high school counselors and our college counselors to counsel kids. If an 11th grader is thinking about going to college, our counselor is going to say, then you need to take Algebra 2. But if they say, no, I'm going to go work for my dad's electrician company, then maybe there's a different math. And so again, 11% of the jobs require Algebra 2, but we're requiring 100% of our students to take Algebra 2. So I think for the sake of our students and for the sake of being able to find somebody in the trades and having happier students, fulfilled students, let's change the standards, keep the high standards, but make them more personal for each student. Thank you, committee, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Farnsworth. We'll be laying over Senate File 360 for possible inclusion in the omnibus education bill. Thank you. Next up, Senator Boldon, Senate File 1355, which we will also be laying over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Senator Boldon, come on up, and I see you have a testifier as well. So thank you. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're going to change gears here from algebra to Alzheimer's disease. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So Alzheimer's is a disease of the brain that affects an estimated 1 in 9 Americans age 65 and older at a tremendous cost to families and our healthcare system. This illness progresses from subtle changes that are noticeable to the person with the illness to mild cognitive impairment to brain changes that cause problems with memory and eventually physical disability. There's an estimated over 100,000 Minnesotans that are living with Alzheimer's disease today. And aging Minnesota also means that families will look different. We need to equip young Minnesotans with the tools to understand what healthy aging and dementia look like, as well as resources on how they can reduce their risk for developing dementia in the future. 1 in every 4 dementia caregivers are considered sandwich caregivers, meaning they provide support for both a child and an older adult with dementia. So what do we do about this? Minnesota, in this bill, would create a voluntary health curriculum module on healthy aging and Alzheimer's disease for grades 6 through 12. This does not include a mandate. It is an encouragement, and individual schools will have the option to use this curriculum. This would raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, equip young people with the tools to recognize the warning signs of dementia and how to better support their loved ones, provide information on how to reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. Such structured classroom discussions with peers can help reduce the stigma around brain health. Regular routine conversations about dementia can better support the many children who are living with or have family members with Alzheimer's disease. So in this bill, it would set forth that the Departments of Health and Education would partner with orgs like the Alzheimer's Disease Association to create this curriculum, as they successfully have done in other cases, including vaping education for Minnesota students. And with that, Mr. Chair, I do have a testifier.
Thank you. And are they remote, or Robert Freeman?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Here I am. I see my face on the big screen. Great. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honored committee members. My name is Robert Freeman, and I am the Vice President of Public Policy at the Minnesota and North Dakota chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementias by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. We represent the more than 100,000 Minnesotans with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, and the nearly 165,000 people who are their unpaid caregivers. We are in full support of this bill, which had bipartisan support last year, and we appreciate Senator Boldon for bringing it forward again. I want to read for you the testimony of a high school student who wanted to testify before you on this bill today, but wasn't able to be here. My name is Addison, and I am a junior from Senate District 38 in Brooklyn Park. I'm honored to testify before you today to advocate for Senate File 1355, which would provide dementia education in our high school health class curriculum. As future leaders and caregivers, it's crucial for students to understand the impact of dementia on individuals, families, and communities. Dementia, including Alzheimer's disease, is a pervasive and challenging health issue that affects a growing number of people in our state and across the nation. Including dementia education in our health class curriculum will empower students and teachers with knowledge and skills to navigate this condition. This education will also prepare students for the increasing role they may play as caregivers, family members, or healthcare professionals in the lives of those affected by dementia. One day, students in my health class may be caring for you or your loved ones. The bill aligns with our state's commitment to comprehensive and inclusive health education. By incorporating dementia education into curriculum, we're not only addressing a pressing public health issue, but also preparing our students to be more compassionate and informed citizens. This knowledge will extend beyond the classroom to foster a culture of empathy and support for those affected by dementia. I urge the committee to support Senator Boldon's bill, Senate File 1355, recognize the valuable impacts it will have on the lives of countless individuals facing dementia. By equipping our students with the knowledge and understanding of this condition, we're investing in a future generation well prepared to contribute to the well-being of our society. Thank you. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Members, questions for the testifiers or the author of the bill, Senator Abler?
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. And this is a non-mandate mandate, so I think this is amazing. Never mind. But I think it's a good idea, and I think students learning about this, just even in the course of their health class, might make them want to make life choices that help them not get dementia. So, and actually understand their grandma better too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Abler. Senator Kunin?
Just to follow up on Senator Abler, don't you think that Algebra 2 might help with that anti-Alzheimer's, kind of issue there? But I do like this bill. I think it's really important, and as we see the increase in excuse me, dementia starting earlier and more often. I think we can't wait to learn about this until we're an adult or until our family is embroiled in it. And if there is an opportunity to provide extra education around this situation is especially helpful. And especially as we are looking at different ways that we are allowing or moving our students into the healthcare profession. We just had a bill last year that allowed high school students to work in some of the nursing homes or some of these centers that are caring for our adults. And I can actually see this as being a very valuable asset and resource for them. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Senator Kunish. Members? Thank you, Senator Boldon. I hope to be added to this bill as well. I just want to, I wouldn't wish Alzheimer's and dementia on anybody. The last 2 years of my life has been a living hell, and I don't know who my worst enemy on the planet Earth is, but I wouldn't wish what I've gone through on my worst enemy. It's just horrific, and it's draining emotionally, intellectually, and financially. And so anything we can do to educate children in high school about what they might see in their own family at the time or someday is a step in the right direction on education. So thank you for bringing the bill forward. Any final comments?
Thank you for your comments, and I'm sorry for your experiences with that. And I think, as this, dementia is increasing and we have an aging population, that is going to be the reality for more and more Minnesotans. And so if we can equip young folks with skills and resources to both deal with, older folks in their life that may be dealing with this and take steps to prevent it in themselves, I think it's win-win.
Thank you. We'll be laying over Senate File 1355 for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Next up is Senator Gustafson, Senate File 1474. Public high schools direct admissions programs. And you do have a testifier as well. So Senator Gustafson, welcome to the committee. Identify yourself and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Senator Heather Gustafson. Direct admissions is an innovative college access program that proactively accepts high school students into college based on their GPA at the end of junior year. In their senior year, students at participating high schools receive a letter informing them of the Minnesota colleges and universities, anywhere from 28 to 55 institutions, where they'll be automatically accepted. The program has already shown incredible success, significantly increasing FAFSA completion and college enrollment rates across all demographics. Senate File 1474 expands direct admission statewide, ensuring that by 2029, every Minnesota high school student has access to this opportunity. By eliminating application fees, reducing uncertainty, and encouraging students to see themselves as college material, direct admissions makes post-secondary education more accessible and helps keep homegrown talent in Minnesota, strengthening our workforce and economy. I will share, as a high school teacher for many, many years, this is one of the things that is probably the most stressful for students, is the application process and that anxiety they feel about whether or not they'll be accepted into a college. When I taught at Centennial High School, we had college in a day, and it was the University of Wisconsin Stout, so I'd hate to lose students to Wisconsin, but hopefully we can make this happen here in Minnesota. But what Stout would do is they would come in and they would sit down with any students who were interested. They would look over their transcripts, their GPA, the class workload and schedule that they had, and then base their preliminary acceptance They would help them then with the FAFSA, walk them through the steps of the FAFSA, and then by the end of the day, they were given an a decision about whether or not they were accepted. Most students were accepted. I think I don't remember any of my students who weren't. If they were interested in Stout, they were probably already somewhat qualified, and they felt an enormous amount of pride. And they were one step closer to going to college, and many of them never thought that they'd be eligible for college. So it's a great program. It boosts their confidence. It encourages students to think about their post-high school career. And it isn't just about a four-year school. This applies to our vocational schools and two-year colleges. But really, it's just a way of expanding some of their ideas about what they could do after high school, and it really does. I've seen firsthand, as 3 out of the 4 of my kids are also in college, it really does boost their confidence and helps them make those decisions that are best for them after high school. So thanks for your consideration. I do have my testifier whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
We're ready, Mr. Shaver. And if we have about maybe 12 testifiers left on the 2 bills, so if we could kind of be efficient and limit our testimony to 3 to 4 minutes, that'd be so great. Thank you.
You bet. Chair Swedzinski and members of the committee, good afternoon again. Matt Shaver from Med Allies, here to testify in strong support of Senate File 1474. I want to thank Senator Gustafson for her leadership on this bill that seeks to scale statewide the best-kept secret in education programs in Minnesota. With a hazy budget future facing the state, Senator Gustafson has exhibited tremendous fiscal responsibility by authoring such a short bill, easily saving the state at least several cents in printer ink that a longer, more onerous bill would have entailed. So thank you for that. This bill is actually a continuation of the conversation of the first bill and who the state sees and values as college material. Direct admissions takes a very simple approach that every student in the state of Minnesota is college material. They just may not know it yet. Direct admissions nearly speaks for itself. The Office of Higher Education and Aaron Salazak, who runs the program, deserves a tremendous amount of praise and gratitude for their work in establishing and running this program in partnership with high schools throughout the state to provide students with information and opportunity to make informed choices about their future. Combined with North Star Promise and the Fostering Independent grants, Minnesota has braided together programs that literally change trajectories of lives. Direct admissions began as a pilot program proposal from OHE after the Higher Education Committee, chaired by the late Senator Tomasoni, included it in his 2021 omnibus, which unanimously passed the Senate. About 1/4 of high schools in Minnesota already participate in direct admissions, and the outcomes for kids who attend those high schools and participate in direct admissions are impressive. Higher rates of FAFSA completion and college enrollment than at non-direct admissions high schools, and these trends have largely held across demographic groups as the program has scaled from a pilot of 39 high schools to now more than 180 high schools in 56 counties. My favorite stat about direct admissions is that if the initial cohort of direct admissions student participants were their own state, they'd be the #1 state in the country for FAFSA completion at 77%. Typically, Minnesota's FAFSA completion rate is around 45 to 50%, which puts us in the bottom 10 to 15 states nationally. As Senator Gustafson mentions, we have about 55 2- and 4-year colleges and universities, public and private in Minnesota, that participate in direct admissions. So when students receive their letter in their senior year, they're automatically accepted into at least 28 of them. Direct admissions creates a direct pipeline to certificate programs, associate degrees, and 4-year degrees as well. It has the potential to keep our homegrown talent in state, keeping moms and dads happy as well, so their kids aren't going too far away for college. There's something truly special about not just meeting students halfway when it comes to post-secondary opportunities, but bringing opportunity right to students. And to echo what the Office of Higher Education has said, direct admissions is rooted in the idea that all students are college material. This is a wonderful message and sets a high expectation, but it's meaningless if all doesn't actually mean all students. Already tens of thousands of high school seniors have gotten this message, but it should not be up to zip code or chance that dictates whether a student attends a school that offers this opportunity. Every child deserves this opportunity to attend a direct admissions high school. Senator Gustafson's bill guarantees it. Thank you again for her leadership, as well as Senator Abler for signing on to make this a bipartisan effort. The same bill was introduced today in the other body with a Republican lead author, showing once again that there is common ground when it comes to what kids need in school. I want to thank you all for your public service to our state.
Thank you. Casey Metcalf is next, followed by Sierra Roiger.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Casey Metcalf, Manager of Government Relations at Students United, representing 55,000 students of Minnesota State Universities. Today, I join you as a first-generation college graduate and a former public school teacher of over 10 years with firsthand experience witnessing the impact of the direct admissions program on my former students. For 10 years, I taught middle school social studies in Minneapolis Public Schools, Columbia Heights Public Schools, and Farmington Public Schools. One of the greatest joys of teaching middle school is getting visits from high school students. After students leave 8th grade, some inevitably return to wander the halls of their middle school and give unsolicited advice to their former teachers about what they're wearing and how they've rearranged their classroom. As if by magic, middle schoolers that only years before would have struggled to follow the simplest of instructions are now self-possessed, thoughtful young adults who sometimes still struggle to follow the simplest of instructions. It's truly inspiring. In these conversations, students share their plans for the future. Some of those students are college material and completely unaware of their options. These students do well in school, they participate in extracurriculars, they write extraordinarily well. But questions of getting in and paying for school get in the way. That's why I'm so glad that Minneapolis high schools participated in direct admissions from the beginning since 2022. Direct admissions uses a student's GPA at the end of their junior year to offer automatic acceptance to a wide variety of public and private schools in the state, from two-year colleges and local communities to four-year institutions like Minnesota State Universities, the University of Minnesota satellite campuses, and private institutions like the University of St. Thomas. Many of my former students in Minneapolis were some of the first classes to benefit from this program. I've gotten to hear from them about about their options post-high school. The prospect of automatic acceptance is interesting to parents too, especially those parents of first-generation college students that are unfamiliar with a college application or filing the FAFSA. Last year on a wall in Columbia Heights High School, I saw acceptance letters for students to the University of Minnesota, Minnesota State colleges and universities, and private colleges. Many of them were actually just the direct admissions letter that they had received directly from their counselor, indicating that they were taking the offer from the Office of Higher Ed and applying with a participating college or university. Today, 120 participating high schools enroll an estimated 22,000 students. However, 59% of students in direct admissions high schools attend a school in the 7-county Twin Cities area. If we want to keep talent in the state of Minnesota, especially talent from greater Minnesota where our campuses are, this program is a great way to do it. Today you're going to hear from 2 college students from greater Minnesota, one who benefited from this program and one who did not. Both of these students chose to stay in Minnesota for their education. Many of their peers did not. How many would have chosen to stay if they were made aware of what is available to them as a citizen of the state of Minnesota? If you have worked in schools, you may be familiar with the phrase career and college-going culture. This phrase broadly means teachers and administrators have expectations that after high school, students will continue to learn and grow with new degrees, certifications, or go directly into the workforce. The point isn't where they go, it's that they're aware of the major transitions that's coming in their life and that they have a plan. Direct admissions provides the bridge for this gap to make sure students are aware of the resources at their disposal. I, alongside students from Minnesota State Universities, ask that you support Senate File 1474 to ensure that all current 8th graders in the state of Minnesota can take advantage of this great program by the end of their senior year. I urge you to support this low-cost, high-reward way to keep talent in our state. Thank you for your time and your service to the great state of Minnesota.
Thank you. Is Sierra Roger here? Remote? Followed by Mike Dean. Sarah, I can see you said yes.
Yes, if you're
Begin your
ready.
testimony and identify yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, so Chair Swedzinski, Ranking Member Coleman, and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. For the record, my name is Sierra Roiger, and I serve as the State Chair for Students United, and I am currently attending Minnesota State University Mankato pursuing a Master's in College Student Affairs. I am a high school graduate from Springfield, Minnesota. I am also a first-generation college student. When I graduated in 2018, direct admissions did not exist. My class went on to become farmers, business owners, nurses, physicians, engineers, and more. But many went out of state to SDSU in Brookings to attain their education. When it came to me, my mom told me from the beginning that I was on my own. I had to figure out applications, programs, acceptance requirements, scholarships, and the FAFSA all on my own. I was overwhelmed. It seemed every day I was finding more and more programs that I wanted to attend, but I wasn't sure if I would be accepted. The guessing game was, and still is, very real. Had there been direct admissions at my school, I fully believe that more students from Springfield would have stayed in Minnesota for their education. I know for me, instead of focusing on applications and anxiety, waiting for possible acceptance or waitlist letters, I would have been putting my efforts toward my classes, and it would have been an easier experience completing the FAFSA and being able to say to my mom that I was already accepted. I would have looked at the scholarship opportunities from the schools participating in direct admissions, and I would have had a much clearer picture of the financial burden of a college degree. Direct admissions is not only a benefit to the students it serves, but to the state of Minnesota. Students who study here, stay here, work here, and pay taxes here. Those interested in law enforcement careers would be able to hear of Alexandria Technical College and the program they have. Or they could hear of the opportunities at Minnesota State College Southeast, from biomedical equipment repair all the way to child care assistance to mechatronics that I'm sure Senator Miller may be aware of. After all, a plurality of students who are accepted through direct admissions attend a 2-year institution. The issue lies in the lack of high schools around the state that participate in this program. Students don't get to always choose where we attend K-12, but Senate File 1474 would make sure that all students in the state would know that there is a place for them beyond high school, regardless of zip code. Direct admissions lets students know their options and makes clear that their talents are wanted in our schools and in our state. I urge you to support Senate File 1474. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, Mike Dean, followed by, the next two testifiers are remote. Okay, Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Mike Dean. I'm the Executive Director of North Star Prosperity. We're an organization committed to expanding opportunities for every Minnesotan to achieve economic freedom and build a meaningful future. I'm here to encourage you to support Senate File 1474. The direct admissions program is a pivotal pathway for giving students more educational choices and bridging the gap between opportunity and access. Minnesota is at a critical moment in post-secondary education. While we've been leaders in educational achievement, ranking 6th nationally with 94.3% of residents holding a high school diploma or higher, there is growing concern about the steep decline in college enrollment. Over the past decade, college enrollment among high school graduates has dropped from 70% to 60%, according to the Minnesota SLED's data. This trend has serious implications for our economy and our workforce, especially when you consider that 3 out of 4 jobs are going to require some sort of post-high school degree here by the year 2030. The challenge we face are clear, but we have an opportunity to act decisively. Programs like direct admissions and the North Star Promise help students see the range of options available to them after high school, from technical training to associate or bachelor's degrees. These initiatives simplify the application process, highlight affordable pathways, and provide flexibility for students to balance life responsibilities while pursuing education. Direct admission operates on the powerful premise that every high school graduate in Minnesota is college material. By notifying students about opportunities at Minnesota college universities, the program eliminates barriers like uncertainty and lack of awareness. It's not just about traditional 4-year degrees, too. This program helps students explore what works best for them, whether it's a 2-year program, a technical education, or an advanced credential. Minnesota faces a workforce shortage in critical sectors such as healthcare, technology, and manufacturing. Helping students complete the program that aligns with their personal and professional goals directly addresses this gap. The combination of direct admissions and North Star Promise is already fueling a surge in college enrollment. Minnesota stands out among Midwest states, with community colleges reporting an 11.5% increase in enrollment this year. These trends are promising, but there's still more that can be done. We must act boldly to strengthen and expand these programs to ensure that they serve all Minnesota students, regardless of their background or circumstances. And we can't afford to wait to 2029 to implement this bill. Minnesota students in the workforce need these changes now. Moving up the timeline will allow us to meet pressing economic demands and ensure more students have the opportunity to pursue higher education without delay. We believe that supporting Senate File 1474 isn't about education, it's about investing in the future of Minnesota. It's about giving students the freedom to choose the pathway that works best for them, equipping them with the resources to succeed, and building a stronger, more resilient economy. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The next two testifiers, as I said, are remote. Karina Veleda and Thalia Trebelhorn. Karina, are you ready?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Begin your testimony and make sure you identify yourself.
Thank you. So good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Karina Veleda. I'm a mother, a student, an advocate, and a future lawyer, and I'm delighted to be here to share my story with you all today. Several women have motivated me to be here today. I'm here for the mothers across Minnesota who deserve better. I'm here for my daughter, Luna, who deserves a bright future, and I'm here for my mom, who taught me that you can achieve your goals through hard work and sacrifice. My mother was a Salvadorian immigrant who didn't speak English and yet managed to open a thriving grocery store for 15 years. She worked around the clock to provide me and my siblings with a better life. Her commitment to our future was undeniable. However, what my mother could not teach me was about navigating the college application process. Our family wasn't financially illiterate enough to navigate the complex web of federal, state, and merit-based aid. In high school, no one sat me down and talked me through my options. I graduated high school in 2014, and my brother also graduated high school in 2022. After I graduated high school, I moved to Burnsville and I became a bartender until COVID happened. My brother doesn't see himself as college material and has chosen to quit the whole process. I wish our education system could have done more so students don't just get a job for the rest of their lives that just allows them to live paycheck to paycheck. Higher education can change this. My experience in elementary and high school has been that we are not made for college because we lack the guidance or funds. Minnesota has exceptional higher education institutions here in the metro, the suburbs, and close to many rural areas. High school should not be the final chapter in a student's journey. I personally have had to jump through many hurdles in higher education to graduate as a first-generation and non-traditional student. The direct admissions program will provide a pathway to success for all students because it doesn't just pick and choose who is college material, but it will create a path for those who lack the guidance. Instead of having to wait almost 10 years to graduate with their bachelor's like myself. The direct admissions program has made significant impact, but it is available at less than half of the high schools here in Minnesota. This legislation will ensure that students don't self-select themselves out of college because they assumed it wasn't for them, like my brother. The direct admissions program will give a letter to students that gives them an acceptance, which would have changed my mindset when I was younger. But we should also help students understand how much college costs and send a clear message about affordability programs in these letters, like letting students know that they qualify for the North Star Promise and many other private college free tuition scholarship programs. The traditional college application process is filled with hidden obstacles, and the direct admissions program can change people's lives for many students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And the last testifier, Thalia.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can. Thank you. Begin when you're ready and identify yourself.
Chair Swedzinski and committee members, my name is Talia Trebelhorn, and I'm a student at Minnesota State University, Moorhead, and I'm proud to say that I benefited from the direct admissions program when I graduated high school in 2023. The transition from high school to college is an extremely stressful time in a person's life. I spent my senior year filling out college applications, researching and applying for FAFSA and scholarships, maintaining my GPA, researching various institutions to see if they were the right fit for me, and I did all of that while working multiple jobs because I was worried I wouldn't be able to pay for college. I even had the help of my mom and my 3 older brothers to guide me through that process, and it's still an extremely difficult process. Thousands of high schoolers share my stress of planning for the next 4 or 5 years of our lives. In my senior year at Faribault High School, I was called in for a meeting with my counselor. During this meeting, I was informed that my cumulative GPA had placed me in the Tier 6 category of this program, meaning that I was automatically accepted at a wide range of Minnesota institutions that include 2-year, 4-year, public and private schools, as long as I completed the applications as instructed. This also allowed me to apply fee-free to any institution. Knowing that I was already college material freed me to focus on choosing the best fit and exploring my financial aid options rather than wondering if I was even going to be accepted to a school at all. I know that a large majority of my peers either did not attend a 4-year or went to a 2-year. I feel like this bill would also remind students that a 2-year degree is still higher education and is just as valuable as a 4-year degree. As many of the testifiers before me said, only less than half of Minnesota high schools are participating in this, and it's creating a large divide between rural and metro schools. We have a lot of great homegrown talent in the rural areas and a lot of amazing institutions, including my own, Minnesota State University, Moorhead. It gets the word out about more institutions and more options for students in the state and encourages them to stay in state. By assuring our students that they are college material, we can address the workforce shortages and strengthen our communities. I would also like to emphasize that all of the data required for this program already exists. High schools have records of everybody's GPAs, and colleges have their defined admissions criteria. The main cost is just coordinating these systems and not creating any new infrastructure or any random costs here or there. And my counselors' quick access to my GPA and the college's willingness to waive fees, it made the process seamless rather than adding those extra burdens. Direct admissions had lifted barriers both financially and emotionally for me. I firmly believe that every high school senior in the state deserves this opportunity and urge the committee to advance Senate File 1474. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions for any of the testifiers or for Senator Gustafson? Senator Abler.
Like, this is a great bill. Actually, compared to some, I mean, this is a way cool one. I signed a bunch of bills, and this is way in the, just a really useful one. It's funny, I was a little late, but can you just, Senator Gustafson, do you know what this costs to like a school, and why are some not doing it?
Mr. Chair, Senator Abler, first of all, thank you for also being a co-author on this bill. I appreciate you joining me on this. There is no cost to our local school districts. I think some of them, I can't speak to why schools don't do it. A lot of schools do. I think maybe it's just the accessibility of it. It might be the time spent, but I think part of why the expansion is necessary is to just show the overall benefit of how this will help students. And it really, there is some staffing needs on the side of the schools, but I know from when I was at Centennial High School, a lot of the colleges will come in and assist the students as well. So it's a joint effort and would not be too much for our local school districts.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just noticed the implementation date is going to leave many students behind. And I don't know why you just don't do this. And it seems like there is some cost. I would think the colleges would want to chip in for that. And this is like easy marketing. And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the future of this bill is, but I liked it the second you told me. I don't even know if Anoka does this or not. As I just recall, my area is not a particularly high college motivated area. And just to Senator Farnsworth's comment, I just mean beyond high school, go to trade school, be whatever you want to be. And I think to the other topic, I think we should create a couple tracks for kids who they opt in. They just know they're never going to go to one of these places, or maybe a 2-year one, but they're not going to go to a 4-year one or a STEM thing. And so I take that track and the kids so that we have to have the choices. But it is time to innovate. But I think, for heaven's sakes, let's make it easy. I'll just stop there, but I don't know why we're waiting. So thanks, Mr. Chair.
To Senator Abler's question, do we have an answer to that, why we're waiting 4 years?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I do have an answer for you. It is something based on the timeline of our higher ed policy, that they have programs similar and have a track for this to be on the 2029 timeline. So we're just making it for ease of access, lining it up with a higher education policy.
That's a lousy reason, but okay, thank you. Let's just do it. I mean, we're looking for things we can agree on. This is like just a white hat one, so I'll let it go unless Mr. Shaver wants to comment, but it just seems like it's going to help so many students.
Mr. Chair, Matt Shaver for the record for Meta Allies. Just wanted to pop in here to pick the date based on the Office of Higher Education's estimate from their 2024 report on the direct admissions program that they felt that they would be capable of scaling this statewide in the next 3 to 5 years. So we picked the more conservative date, trying to be sensitive to mandates. Not all mandates are 4-letter words. It's a 7-letter word, right? And some are really necessary and needed. And so trying to respect the urgency and making sure we're not leaving kids behind while also being sensitive to not trying to put too much on schools at the same time is where that date came from. But,
Well, we should do it tomorrow. Final thought. Actually, Office of Higher Ed works for us, so thank you.
And this bill is going to higher ed. Yeah. And do you care to speak to this question from Senator Abler? Go ahead and identify yourself and be as brief as possible, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members. For the record, my name is Aaron Salasek. I am the coordinator of the direct admissions program with Office of Higher Education. Thank you for advancing this bill, Senator Gustafson. There are two primary reasons why a school at the moment doesn't participate. The first is staffing concerns, and so, Senator Abler, I appreciate the question. It's been voluntary across the board since the inception of this program, and so every post-secondary institution participates in a voluntary nature, as does every district, high school, be they charter, public at the district level, or individual high schools. And for the first time this year, we have our first parochial school participating, Hill Murray. It's a very exciting program. I love the testimonies from students, but there is some substantial setup time by our counselors at the high school level. And I'm sure most of you know this already, but we have one of the most unfortunate student-to-council ratios in the country here in Minnesota, and so it's a pretty substantial lift for a newly joining high school. That being said, as an agency who works for you, we do assess everything. We know it's about 40 to 80 hours on average, and so this past year we built a team matrix with much higher success in terms of implementation and an extremely reduced attrition rate for high schools this year, which was great. The goal from the beginning of this program has always been to scale to all of our public and charter high schools across the state of Minnesota, because we do feel strongly, especially now that the data supports it, that all students will benefit from the program. The second challenge that we have, though, is really technology-based. Many of you are probably familiar with the student information systems across the state of Minnesota. There are 5. We have been working behind the scenes with our SIS partners since the beginning of this program as well. Because as you've heard, the data is available at the high school level around our students, as well as the metrics that are shared with the colleges. However, those partners have to build technology platforms and reports that are accessible, readable, and also can be disseminated quickly to our agency so that we can reshare that information with our college partners who are participating in the program. All of that being said, at the outset of this year, we had 2 of those student information systems on board who had built the product within their platform. A third did actually successfully start this fall as well. We have a 4th that, at least as things are pacing right now, are ready to go ideally this fall with this fall's cohort. And the 5th we have yet to make contact with as an agency, but we're working with some of our MDE peers to see if there's an option around EdFi compliance. And so those are the 2 primary reasons. It's open, actually, in your districts. They can check out the information sessions that are listed on the website. But we'll take any and all high schools, and we have yet to turn away a high school who has asked to participate in the program.
Thanks a lot. And so I appreciate that's helpful. And so when the time comes, I'll be happy to make the motion to send it off to higher ed. And so, Senator Gustafson, just for fun, when you get there on line 1.7, you might want to say by that school year, just in case they can get this going a little earlier. So that's something. I'll leave that up to you. Thank you.
Senator Boldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Gustafson, for bringing this bill. As we were listening to testimony, I emailed you to ask to be a co-author on the bill, and I also reached out to Rochester Schools to ask if we are doing this, and we are, which is great, but certainly see the value in having all schools take part in this. Also want to say thank you to the student testifiers. Appreciate their perspective and their testimony today. And something that one of them said sparked a question for me about the financial information for students. So when they get that letter of, you are admitted, you qualify for these schools, is there also financial information conveyed at that time? For instance, you also may qualify for, the North Star program or financial things like that, because I can imagine, I think one of the great things about this program is that it does eliminate that barrier for students who maybe are thinking, college isn't for me, that they see, oh, it could be, but I think that financial piece maybe is another barrier that students may think about. It's like, oh, I can get in, but I can't afford it, and so making sure they have that awareness of what financial resources may be available to them, I think would be also important.
Thank you. Senator Wiesenberg, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I know we're running short on time. I like this. I'm trying to figure out, so when I graduated 25 years ago, we did these things. So I don't know, there's schools that don't tell kids about college entrance, or I guess I don't get it. It sounds like someone said half the schools don't participate. I don't know. Is that, I guess I don't understand why high schools wouldn't be telling kids about college. I mean, it makes sense to do it. And is there a time that we just stop doing it, or I guess I don't get why every high school wouldn't just prepare kids to go, if they want to go to college, and why we're not talking about it. So I guess maybe that's a statement, but it's just, yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Save it for your closing statement.
Okay.
Because I have two quick things to say, and then it's all on you.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing this bill forward. I think what we've tried to do in the legislature the last few years is try to get young families to stay here and or to move here. And I think your bill will encourage that idea. My nervousness is putting things on counselors' plates, adding to that. So anything in your testimony in higher ed that you could do to alleviate counselors, maybe concerns that they would have added things to do during their day to set this program up would be, I think, helpful for the counselors to hear. With that said, closing statements, thanks for bringing your bill forward. Thank you all your testifiers. And try to keep it short, and I know you will, because Senator Mann's up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. And Senator Wiesenberg, you're right. So all schools do, I hope, right, let students know what their options are. But this program would automatically, it's direct admission, so you'd be automatically admitted based on your school records, your grades, your test scores, things like that. And so it sort of eliminates a thing, or an obstacle. Sorry, I feel the pressure to say it fast, so I'm not sure if I said it eloquently. So I'll just close with, thank you very much. I am a graduate of Morehead State that's how old I am. We called it Morehead State back then. So go Dragons. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Mann. Do you want to make a motion, Senator Abler? Okay, the motion to send it to higher ed, and I appreciate that the teacher in you senses the bell's about to ring, so thank you. And we just did, didn't we? Oh, we're recommending it to be passed to higher ed. Yeah, thank you. Senator Mann, where'd she go? All those in favor, follow Senator Duckworth's lead. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you, Senator Abler. Senator Mann, and we have 4 testifiers, and if they keep their testimony to 2 to 3 minutes, we're going to be perfect. Thank you, Senator Mann. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, before you is Senate File 507, which seeks to make all parents equal partners in the process of developing their children's individualized education program, or IEP. There is clear evidence that when schools and families work together, student learning and outcomes improve, and so do the children's attitude toward school, their social skills, their behaviors, and their educational outcomes. This holds true across families of all economic, ethnic, racial, educational backgrounds, and for students of all ages and abilities. The Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA, which is the federal law that governs education for students with disabilities, mandates that parents must be equal partners in the process of developing an IEP. However, Mr. Chair, you were here today that this is actually not what is happening across our communities and with our families. And with that, I will throw it over to my testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Mann. And I think I failed to mention it, Senate File 507. Jillian Nelson, Valerie Dosland are the first two testifiers. Oh, Maren Christensen, thank you, sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much, Chair Swedzinski and committee members and Senator Mann. My name is Maren Christensen Hofer. I serve as the executive director for a nonprofit organization called the Multicultural Autism Action Network, or Mann, which serves families of children with disabilities specifically in our multicultural communities. And I would like to begin by saying that our work serving as advocates for families brings us in contact with amazing teachers and paras and staff who are all doing incredible work to do right by our children. And there's no shortage of people that are just doing amazing things by our children in schools. But unfortunately, no one calls an advocate to tell them how wonderful things are going. So today, we're going to tell some stories about when things didn't go so well, and specifically about that IEP process, or individualized education program. Many of you who are educators or school board members know that that IEP process is extremely cumbersome. It is very paperwork intensive. There's a lot of really complicated jargon. It involves often documents that are 10 to 20 to even 40 pages long sometimes. It's an alphabet soup, and it is not a user-friendly process at all, even for those of us who speak English as our first language. So I want you to think for a moment about what that process feels like if you are a person with a disability or if you are a person who speaks a language other than English at home. As Senator Mann mentioned, one of the cornerstones of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, is parent participation in that process. Yet we know from our work that not all parents have equal opportunity, equal access to this process. You're going to hear from some parents today who are going to share their stories about how this process went wrong. And so what we are doing with this bill is we're bringing some common sense provisions, many of which are already implemented by schools. This is a policy change only. We're not asking for additional funding, and we do not believe that this is going to bring a lot of additional costs to districts. Our intention is certainly not to place an undue burden on already overworked special education teachers, but it's simply to create a process so that if families need that additional support to be part of the IEP process, they have a way to do that. They have a way of asking for it. We believe that when schools and families collaborate, kids win. It's that simple, and that's what this bill aims to do. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. Jillian Nelson.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chair Swedzinski and committee members. My name is Jillian Nelson, and I'm the Policy Director for the Autism Society of Minnesota. I'm also an autistic adult and a formal special education student myself, who did not take Algebra 2 and made it to Policy Director. I'm here today to ask for your support for Senate File 507. As part of my role at the Autism Society, I manage our information and resource hotline along with our policy work. I have lost track of the number of calls I have received since the first time this bill was introduced, from parents with various disabilities struggling to get very simple accommodations to participate fully in their autistic child's IEP process. And I am talking about easy accommodations: receiving the IEP before the meeting to have processing time, lower the lights in the meeting room, receive all communications and documents by email, schedule the meeting in a wheelchair-accessible room. But instead of these requests being accommodated in the spirit of the ADA and IDEA, these parents were denied accommodations. And then they were told by the team that they entrust to provide accommodations for their child with a disability that they should file a complaint with MDE, who can assist because it's not a student issue. They are then sent to the Human Rights Commission, and the Human Rights Commission wants proof that the parent followed the policy and procedures to request accommodations through the district. How do we show documentation that a policy and procedure was followed when one doesn't exist? And in all this mess, trust is broken between the parent and the special education team. And trust is the most important component to any team. Parents experience trauma when advocating for their child. Teachers have more work on their plate responding to the MDE and HRC complaints. And the child is stuck in the middle of it all with an IEP that a parent was not able to fully participate in creating. And that's the best case scenario. Worst case, the child loses support, gets moved to the wrong setting, has inappropriate interventions that cause trauma or injury. This bill is a very effective remedy. It removes the guesswork. It mandates the districts to have a plan that everyone understands so that the team can succinctly work together, so that that team can keep trust, reduce trauma, and support the child that we all want to succeed. Thank you for your support of Senate File 507.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up. Ms. Dosland. And after that is Fatima Molis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Valerie Dosland. I represent the Minnesota Administrators for Special Education, which are the special education directors throughout the state. I want to thank Senator Mann for her time to meet with us last week to talk about our concerns. I first also want to just start that MACE wholeheartedly agrees that parents of students with disabilities have the opportunity to meaningfully participate in decisions regarding their child's education. Parental involvement is a fundamental component of a student's success, and we are committed to ensuring school districts follow current law and that families have the necessary support, resources, and accommodations to engage fully in the special education process. However, MACE does have concerns about the bill, and the testifiers before you did talk about already existing rules and law that govern accommodations. I do just want to also add that there is the IDEA, there is the ADA, and there's also the Minnesota Human Rights Act. But in addition, last session, this legislature passed a requirement for school districts to develop and create a language access plan. Lastly, and additionally, you heard some families talk about this, but there is a process through which families can make a complaint through the Department of Ed, through the dispute resolution process. And while families are here today that express concerns, I can also provide lots of examples where families did go to MDE and found a resolution through that process. Lastly, I just want to again appreciate Senator Mann for her time, and I look forward to having further discussions on possible changes to the bill that consider already existing laws and policies and procedural safeguards notices that are required to be provided to families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dosland. Next up, Ms. Molis.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Fatima Molis. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I'm here to share parents' stories today. The first story is Abian. Abian is a mother of a beautiful 12th grade, autistic 12th grade son. She's very involved in his education. Abian has never missed an IEP meeting. During pandemic, she spent 6 hours by his side. Growing up as a refugee, which she never had a formal education, Mohammed's education was very important to Abian. In 10th grade, Abian had some troubles with school. Even though she could speak English just fine, reading the IEP documents was causing a lot of anxiety. She was handed 40 pages of the IEP to review. That caused overwhelmingly, anxiety. She reached out to advocates to translate for what the IEP was saying. That's then when she discovered her 10th grade son was reading in 3rd grade math level. Imagine the shock. She had dreamed of her son going to college, but now that dream seemed impossible. No one had ever explained anything about the IEP and what was in those 40 pages. She didn't want any other parent to experience this. With the help of an advocate, she switched case managers, and now things are going much better for Mohammed. She's very proud of him and the work and the young man he's becoming. She asks you to support this bill to ensure all parents have full access to the IEP process. Second parent, Halima. Halima is a mother of 2 autistic boys. Last summer, one of her sons was scheduled for a 3-year assessment. The report showed that he no longer qualified for an IEP. Instead, they planned to move into 504 plan. The translator told her the IEP and the 504 plan were the same thing, so she didn't worry. When school started, she learned the lack of IEP meant no more transportation for her son. And an advocate explained that an IEP and a 504 plan were not the same. And she had been misinformed. We filed a complaint with the Department of Education. They said it was too late and the school had broken no rules. Not having a transportation meant a huge burden for Halima and her family. The same bus picks up the other kid, but the one without the IEP, she has to drive him because it was not safe for him to ride the regular bus due to him eloping and running away. It was not safe for her son to ride the regular bus. She asks you to support this bill to ensure that no families goes through this pain. Third story is a mother, Firdousa, her son, beautiful autistic son, Mohammed. When he was in 4th grade, they decided to send him to a school that felt like a jail because they said he was dangerous. Mohammed likes to hug people around their legs. When one person did not like it and fell, they labeled him as a dangerous kid. She was never given a permission for this and didn't understand why that decision was made for him. Nobody explained anything about the most restrictive setting that her son was moved to. After working with an advocate for 2 years, we finally moved him to a new school. However, when he arrived, it was too overwhelming for him, and he had a hard time adjusting. One day, she received a call for her son that he has been injured. When arrived, she found him locked in a closet with a janitor blocking the door. The janitor told her this happened almost every day for 2 months. He's been locked in a separate room by himself with no windows. We get him out of this school to a better school. No parent should ever experience this. Schools need to make decisions with full parent understanding. Please, I ask you to support this bill that this never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final testifier, Julie Edwards. And I apologize to members for going over a little bit today, so I appreciate you sticking around for a few more minutes for Senator Mann's bill.
I think Ms. Edwards was going to testify remotely.
Ms. Edwards?
She did provide a copy of her testimony, which I'm happy to read if that's allowable. Okay.
Yep, we'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, this testimony is from Jules Edwards. She writes, I'm a disabled parent of disabled children. As a parent, nothing matters more to me than my children, and I work hard to ensure that they will have education and skills needed to live a good life. Unfortunately, I don't feel like all Minnesota public schools nor the Minnesota Department of Education always share my goals for my kids. Often, it feels like a game of gotcha, where some people know the rules and the system, and others are more concerned about evading lawsuits than they are about the well-being of disabled students. I know that Minnesota public schools can be, I know how good Minnesota schools can be. We've had some great experiences, and we've had experiences that I can only describe as discrimination and abuse. At times, MDE has been helpful. At other times, it's been harmful. Currently, there is no policy or procedure to allow disabled parents to request reasonable accommodations in the IEP process, neither through the schools nor through MDE. This means that both the Minnesota Department of Education and public schools throughout the state cannot comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act nor IDEA, which requires allowing parents meaningful participation. When a disabled parent is excluded from IEP team decision-making because the school refuses to allow reasonable accommodations, that parent is not allowed meaningful participation. The IEP process is complicated and nuanced. Many parents have difficulty advocating for their children, whether the parent has a disability or not. When my child was in school, I requested a reasonable accommodation for my disability so I could effectively advocate for them in the IEP process. The special education director refused that accommodation. I filed a complaint with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights because I was not allowed meaningful participation based on my disability status. The Minnesota Department of Human Rights determined that I didn't follow the procedure to request reasonable accommodations because no such procedure exists, and they closed the case. Mind you, they did not close the case because my rights weren't violated. They closed the case because there was no procedure followed. Ultimately, due to maltreatment and the disenfranchisement of my child, I had to homeschool my child. They lost out on the entire high school experience as well as transition services, which is something that cannot be replaced. This bill will help provide guidance to both school districts and MDE to ensure that there's consistency that disabled parents can meaningfully participate in school education. Because apparently, the state of Minnesota needs a law to make sure that public schools comply with the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I know we're over the time, but is there any questions or anything for the testifiers or Senator Mann? Senator Mann, thank you. Closing our closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's clear that there's a gap here. We have numerous stories about how there's a gap here. And so we are happy to continue working with the department and as well as with all stakeholders to make sure we're not duplicating efforts, but to make sure that we have procedures in place to make sure we're closing this gap.
Thank you for your briefness in your closing statement. We'll be considering this for possible inclusion in the Education Policy Omnibus Bill. Thank you, audience members, for coming today. Thank you, members that hung in here till the end. We appreciate your involvement in this wonderful committee. Thank you. And with that said, we'll see everybody on Monday at 12:30.